Hi everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're making a Danish classic, Tarteletter. It basically means tartlets. They consist of a pastry base and then a filling. In today's video, we'll show you how to make a more traditional filling, which is høns i Asparagus, which means hens in asparagus, except we will be using chicken. Hen is difficult to find. And you would also usually use white asparagus, which we cannot find. Green asparagus it is. A classic with a little modification. We often make these at Christmas lunch or julefrokost, but you can make these year round, and you can change up the filling if you'd like. If you want to learn how to make tartletter, keep on watching. For the pastry shells, you're going to need 300 grams of flour, a quarter teaspoon of salt, 200 grams of unsalted butter. Honestly, if you're using salted, just omit the salt. And lastly, 1 large egg. I will be using my food processor to combine this pastry dough today. You can definitely do this by hand. You can either use a pastry cutter to help mix in the butter, or you can just use your hands and crumble the mixture together really well. I'm just gonna make sure that my blade is down at the bottom and that this bowl is locked in place. And then we're gonna add in our flour. Next, we're adding in our salt. And if you're doing this by hand, you can just combine this in a bowl. We're just gonna run this to combine the flour and salt. Before I add the butter in, I'm going to just cut it into chunks. For this recipe, it's important that the butter is cold. We're going to run this until the mixture resembles sand. If you're doing this by hand, you will have to work it a bit to get the mixture to break down. This is the consistency we have. It is very sandy. You can still see a few chunks of butter, which is totally fine. And now we're going to crack an egg in here and combine it into a dough. If you're doing this by hand, I would whisk the egg together so that's a little bit more mixed up before you add it into the dough. And then you're gonna knead it together until it becomes a dough. For this, I'm going to pulse it, trying to work it as little as possible because the food processor does knead the dough quite a lot, until it starts to come together, and then we'll turn it out and kind of bring the rest together by hand. All right, I can see the dough starting to hold together here, and when I do press it, it does stick together. I'm gonna stop here and turn it out onto a piece of plastic wrap. All right, and I'm gonna press this together into a ball. And now I'm gonna wrap it up. This is gonna chill for at least 30 minutes in the fridge. Towards the end of the chilling time for the dough, preheat your oven to 390 degrees Fahrenheit, which is around 200 degrees Celsius. Our dough has chilled, so now we're ready to put them into our pastry cases. I have these with a fluted edge. I just got these on Amazon. In a pinch, you can use a muffin tin and just line the edges. They just might be a little bit bigger than these. I also only have 12 of these, and this recipe does make 24. I'm gonna have to bake these in 2 batches. Make sure if these are metal that you brush them with either butter or oil or something. These are non-stick for me. If you want a super uniform and even pastry, I would roll this out and then cut them into circles and kind of press them in here. But today I'm just gonna divide the dough and then press them into the cases. I now have 12 mostly even slices, and I'm gonna take each one and press it together into a ball, and then I'll just flatten it a little bit in my palm, and then take my case and press this in to all of the corners really well. You might not get the most even distribution of dough, but this is a lot easier than rolling it out. And I'm gonna set this aside and trim the edges at the end. And then just repeat for all 12. I'm just gonna take a palette knife and run it along the edge to get off the excess. And then if you feel that there's any kind of bare spots, you can always use the scraps to patch that up. I transferred the pastry shells to a baking tray. It's a little warm in my house, so these are actually gonna go in the fridge for around 10 minutes before I pop them in the oven. The rest of the dough is also gonna go in the fridge. And then once they've chilled a bit, they're going to bake for around 18 to 20 minutes. Then we're gonna take them out, remove them from these, let the cases cool a little bit, and then we'll repeat with the remaining 12. For the filling, you're going to need 450 to 700 grams of chicken breast. We decided to use chicken breast in this recipe. And the range is just because a lot of times the packs we get are between a pound and a pound and a half in our grocery stores. So anywhere in that range should work perfectly fine. You're also gonna need 1 medium onion, 1 bunch of asparagus, which is probably between 400 to 500 grams of asparagus, a little bit of olive oil for cooking, 57 grams, I know that's a weird number, but it's half a stick of butter or 4 tablespoons of butter, 60 grams of flour, 375 milliliters of milk. Then you're gonna need around 250 milliliters of chicken stock. You may need a tiny bit more depending on the consistency that you end up with. For seasoning, we have half a teaspoon of garlic powder, salt and pepper to taste, and then what I like to add, which is optional, is some fresh parsley. The first thing we're gonna do is cook our chicken. So you can do this however you would like. Today I'm actually going to just pop these on a foil-lined tray and bake them in the oven and let that cook for around 20 minutes in an oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 204 degrees Celsius. While the chicken is cooking, we're going to cut up our asparagus, dice up our onion, and then chop up our parsley. Our chicken is cooked and it's just gonna cool down a little bit before we cut it up and add it to the filling later.
Next, we're heading on over to the stove and we're going to preheat a large pot, add some oil, and then add in our chopped onion and asparagus. Then we're gonna add in our seasoning, which is garlic powder, salt, and pepper. And while that's cooking over on the stove, we're going to cut our chicken into smaller pieces. Just bite-sized pieces or about the same size as the asparagus is great. Once it's cut up, we're transferring the chicken to a bowl, and then we're also adding our cooked veggies to that same bowl. In that same pot, still over medium heat, we're going to melt our butter, and then once it's melted, we're going to add in our flour and whisk it together really well. Once the flour has absorbed, we're going to start adding our milk just a little bit at a time and whisking it together really well so that there aren't any lumps. Once the mixture is pretty smooth, we're going to add our chicken stock as well and just also keep whisking. Make sure the mixture has come to a boil, make sure the flour thickens properly, and then we're adding in our vegetables and chicken as well as some of that parsley. Then just make sure to check for seasoning, add a little salt and pepper if needed, and that's the filling done.
Now that our filling is ready and our pastry shells are cooked, we're going to assemble. So we'll just add a spoonful or two of filling to each of these. I'm gonna add as much as I can. You still may be left with a little bit of leftovers of the filling. And then I have a little bit of parsley just to sprinkle on top. After filling all 24, we have a little bit of filling left over, which you can always eat just as it is or add a little bit more stock and make it into a soup. Time to try one. The pastry shell is so flaky and buttery. The filling is nice and creamy. It's a perfect little bite. Thank you so much for watching our video. We hope you try to make tarteletta for your next gathering. They're a great party food. And the best part is you can change up some of the ingredients depending on what you have or what you like. Let us know if you do try these in the comments, and we'll see you for the next video. Bye.